Call the Affordable Housing Trust meeting to order for Monday, October 25th. It's 1:27 p.m. We are waiting for the arrival of one of our colleagues who will join us shortly. But for those here present today, thanks for your patience. And what we'll do is we'll start first with item A, which is really housekeeping for the trust. And then when we have Brendan here, because Mr. Howell has indicated he is unable to attend, he has a conflict. Once we have the four members here, we'll get into item B, and we can talk to folks in the audience about that. Thank you for your patience. So the first item under new business is a discussion and possible vote on the next steps for the Pleasant Lake Avenue project, including but not limited to establishing community outreach events for the general public, procuring a surveyor to draft site plans, procuring an engineer to review site plans, procuring an appraiser, and appointment of special legal counsel. So for the trust members, I can get into each of those. With regard to items 2 through 5, really the only outstanding question I had prior to proceeding with those procurements is, how much money do we have? The finance director taught me how to use our fund accounting software known as Munis, and I can tell you that the most recent report shows that the trust has a fund balance of $416,797.99, and that was as of today. What I will have further discussions with the finance director is, knowing that the vast majority of those proceeds have been derived from CPC articles, I just want to make sure that there are certain things that I can use for procurement, and also don't want to encroach upon CPC funds if that's not an appropriate use. Having said that, I have reached out to surveyors, engineers, appraisers, and as you would imagine, as everybody's finding, they are severely backlogged. However, in some instances, the town may be able to craft a package that helps the Affordable Housing Trust for appraisal services, but also the town generally, and maybe that helps expedite getting people on board. For my purposes, I think we should start with item A1, which is establishing community outreach events for the general public. I know both the member to my left and the member to my right we were all present at the site walkthrough last month.
Last Wednesday, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Feels like last month.
Yeah.
So we had an opportunity to do a walkthrough of the property that was acquired from the Marceline estate. And I think it was a very well-attended and positive event. Our tour guide did a wonderful job and was able to make heads and tails of where we were at. Open it up to the trust members if they had any thoughts about that event, and then our next step of expanding it for the general public's benefit. Judith, you want to start?
Larry, looked like you had a, hey, Brendan?
Perfect.
Sorry, guys.
No.
It's okay.
It was on my calendar for 1 a.m. I just
Oh.
didn't see it.
What
My
happens?
apologies, everybody.
This is what happens when you get old.
Oh, boy.
So we're joined by trustee Brendan Lowney, and what I will say is we're going to hold item A in abeyance. We're going to go right to item B based on your presence, and we have some folks here that are looking to talk about it.
Great.
So we'll go back to item A, which we just started, Brendan. In fact, we started the meeting about 3 minutes ago, so you didn't miss anything.
That sounds great. Thank you.
So now we're going to be under new business, item B, and so the trust members have just been handed a packet of information that relates to the future Affordable Housing Trust inventory, and I'll explain why it's future in a moment. And as I go through the process and the properties, we're then going to open it up for representatives from the Adult Shared Living of Harwich Group. We know they have a CPC application, but we could also have a general discussion with them about some of the properties that may become available to the trust. So first, for the trust member benefit, thank you. At the last meeting, you folks had asked me to bring back the list of the housing inventory, if you will. And in doing that exercise, it was both beneficial and a bit of a detriment. Beneficial because it allowed me to discover that the town did not convey what the trust understands to be property in your inventory. So what the trust members should have in their packet is first the vote of town meeting of May 6th, 2019, Brendan, do you have one?
I don't have one.
It's right there.
There should be two there. I thought we had more than enough.
Should be, yep.
Yeah. Oh, you peeled yours off. Okay, gotcha.
Larry, go ahead and take that one.
Okay.
What you'll see first is the town meeting vote from 2019. It was Article 61. And I will tell you that the packet consists of two sets. The first is documentation with the town meeting vote, and the second one is property cards that we'll get into in a moment. If you look on the agenda, there were 8 parcels that were intended to be conveyed to the Affordable Housing Trust because of the positive action of town meeting. However, in preparing for this meeting, I discovered that although the town meeting took the vote, the town, through administration prior, and Board of Selectmen prior, did not convey the land. To that end, this matter is going before the Board of Selectmen tonight to advise them of the same thing. I will tell you that I'm working with Katie Klein of KP Law, and it's a fairly straightforward conveyance. There would obviously be deeds recorded, and everything recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and the property cards would then change to reflect that the ownership is the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust. Again, that mechanism did not take place. Furthermore, if you look at the inventory, you can see that items 7 and 8, I'm sure are guaranteed to engender discussion at the board level. So the result of town meeting vote would have been to convey map 41 parcel B8 from the town to from the town Board of Selectmen to the Affordable Housing Trust. People wouldn't know that by the map and parcel, they'd know it by the address, 728 Main Street, and they'd know it more accurately to be the Albro House. So literally the building next door to us, and that's why I need to have a conversation with the Board of Selectmen that town meeting has authorized the board to convey this. The question for the board is, do you intend on conveying what is presently an office building for the town of Harwich? So we have employees ensconced there, we have town services there, and so a little bit of a sticky wicket with that one.
Do they pay us rent?
The employees do not. We bargained that. That's a joke for the general public, as good or bad as it was. Judith?
Can I ask a clarification question?
Sure, absolutely.
So when you say conveyance, is that just an administration on paper, or does a whole, does the deed need to be rewritten?
So that's what
Just for
council's
the
working
general
on. Yes, so
public.
there's I would call it somewhere between easy and a rigmarole.
Okay.
And this is the midpoint where parcels 1 through 6 could be conveyed. Council's drawing up
Deeds.
fairly standard deeds. The deeds would be executed by the Board of Selectmen. They would then direct me to record them, or council. We record them, and then the deeds would be conveyed to the trust, and you would own them.
Okay.
The property cards would show that ownership and everything else. It gets more difficult with parcels, or 7 and 8 on the agenda. Again, as I've said, the Albro House on 728 Main Street, but also map 40 parcel Z5, which I know is adjacent to land that the trust that we've been working on for a few years now. This one's a little bit more problematic insofar as if you look at the second part of your packet on this, you will see the property card indicating that map 40 parcel Z5 is listed as the town of Harwich through recreation. And so underneath that, you can see that there is an order of taking by eminent domain that occurred, I believe, in 1995.
95.
Yep, and 95. Yep, executed July 21st in 95, exhibits and descriptions. And then related to that is an existing lease. The town of Harwich, presently through the Board of Selectmen, leases that building for the benefit of what was formerly known as the Harwich Junior Theater. Council had questioned if there was additional information demonstrating that originally the town, through town meeting, conveyed the land to the Recreation Department, or what would have been prior to our charter, the Recreation Commission, a wholly independent elected board, and we've found nothing of the sort. In inquiring of the present Rec and Youth Commission, their understanding is that it was always referred to as the rec building, but they never understood that they owned it. Be that as it may, that part's still being researched. So, the question then comes down to is, if this is Board of Selectmen property rather than Recreation Department, the same question would go to the board. Do you intend on conveying this to the trust? It would impact upon the present lease agreement between the Junior Theater and the Board of Selectmen. That wouldn't necessarily prevent the Affordable Housing Trust from having a similar arrangement, but these questions need to be asked in advance. So at this evening's Board of Selectmen meeting, I will be informing the board that Article 61 of the 2019 annual town meeting was not fully accomplished, and that the next step would be for the board to vote to convey these properties, some, all, or a portion. Brendan, did you have?
I'm just trying to remember back, I know it's 2 years ago, but I remember the Albert House, wasn't that an item we pulled off at the last minute?
Not that one.
It was.
Oh, yeah, the
So it's
last two
Earl
were not
Road.
on vote.
It was Earl Road and 728 Main.
Okay.
So those weren't even on there. We pulled them at last minute.
So here's the problem with that. If you have the town meeting vote in front of you,
Yeah.
so the town meeting vote, this is an attested, true copy attest of the town clerk of the actions of town meeting. Sorry. Yeah, so on the town meeting vote, under Article 61, item D is a parcel of land located at 728 Main Street. So the Arborough House was there and was not polled. Item E, 265 Sisson Road, the rec building, was in the article that was voted. If you then carry on to the second page of the certified vote from the town clerk, what we found, I see it here. Under the motion made by the chairman, it was looking to exclude 728 Main Street. So Alborough House for sure. The concern of council is that there was a motion with an amendment. The amendment impacts upon item C. The question was the intent of the amendment to eliminate Part D? So what we have here is the reason why it's still with council. The amended main motion talks about the parcels under C, and it further restricts them. And you can see under the amendment of the main motion, to exclude the development of map 63 parcel J3, extending from 100 feet north of the northernmost state classified vernal pool and isolated wetland, and extending south through the property to map 63 parcel J6, as shown on the attached map or viewed on the screen. However, nothing in this restriction shall prohibit the restricted area from being utilized for mitigation to support development on the remainder of parcel J3, J2, or J1. That was seconded, the amendment carried, and the main motion as amendment carried. So it could be understood, and I'm hoping, well, whether it's understood or not, administration will be arguing that the Alborough House should not be conveyed from the town to the Affordable Housing Trust in the short term. The Board of Selectmen need to have an opportunity to evaluate that to see what they want to have done with that building. And the town meeting vote doesn't compel the board, it authorizes the board. Secondly, that restriction on the parcels under C, are troubling to council at the least. And then last but not least, we still have the rec building, 265 Sisson, which I do not see a reference to that one being pulled, and we still need to find out presently, is it under the care, custody, and control of the Rec Commission, or is it under the care, custody, and control of the Board of Selectmen? The overall message is the Affordable Housing Trust presently has no inventory other than the parcels that were purchased earlier, known as the Marceline Estate, as of this utterance.
Okay.
Okay.
One question.
You can have many questions.
Oh, I'm sure I do.
I still
Was,
do.
was Earl Road included or excluded in that vote?
It wasn't even on there. It didn't even make
Oh, it
it.
didn't even make the
Yeah,
vote?
it was
All right.
dropped like days before.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
There was just the amendment to Depot Road,
And-
and then we pulled, there was a motion to remove the Albert House.
Okay.
So
Okay.
again, the argument will be made to council that the intent of town meeting, despite the amendment, was to remove the Alborough House from the list.
Mhm.
Like I said, even if that's not the case, the town would be looking to remove that from the list. But it does call into question the building at 265 Sisson. And I say that because my recollection, so I started on this trust in November, December of 2019, and I remember working with, as we have on our agenda, Laura Schufeld, and I know there was soil tests and all that. It was my belief, and I'm offering this to say right up front, that I fully expect that my belief is incorrect. But I thought that the property that we were dealing with was adjacent to 265 Sisson.
No, it's all one.
It's all one,
Yeah,
okay,
and the
thank you.
junior theater is just renting the building. They're not renting anything else.
Gotcha,
We had discussions in a couple of meetings about that.
yep,
So I remember that pretty clear.
all
They
right.
They
had-
just have just the building, the footprint of the building inside. They don't even have, I'm not saying a right, but even for the parking.
Parking,
So
okay.
it's just the building they're renting.
Yep.
And their board had sent a letter of support for the project.
Correct.
Great. So then perhaps the only issue with that is for council to figure out, is it already under the care, custody, and control of the Board of Selectmen as we've been acting, even though the property card suggests otherwise? In any event, this is our inventory.
And so the Albro House is absolutely off the table? Because I know we
Yeah,
had.
my answer would
we
be
had-
one way or the other, we can take that off the table.
But, I mean, town hall does not have enough space, I'm guessing, right? If you
Correct.
stretched out into there.
Yep,
And I think when we reviewed the Albro House, there were concerns about the layout and how much housing we could put in there, or, do
I
you
think
guys
there was
remember?
just a concern, it's set up for commercial, and there would be money to probably bring it up to any kind of code, and so, yeah, it was a brief discussion, it wasn't anything
Yeah.
more than that, yeah.
And you don't have a sense of the timeline for how long council will take to review the 265 Sisson property?
I would say fairly expeditiously. When I first reached out to council, she and I were hopeful that we'd have all this information in advance of this meeting, as well as the board meeting tonight. The only outstanding issues from her perspective were, we found information late last week that we shared with her that seems to suggest that that building is under the control of the board, and so that she would take that as sufficient evidence that it doesn't have to involve recreation. But she was still evaluating that. I would imagine that the board would be able to, probably by their meeting no later than November 8th, have all the materials to then do the recordings
Okay.
and the conveyances. Certainly with parcels 1 through 6 as listed on the agenda. And
Just
parcel
because I
7
think
we've
we have
covered.
contracts out too for the
Say again?
consultants. Because I think we have contracts out with the consultants.
Correct,
Or with COVID at least.
correct, and that's
I know
gonna come
where
up
those
under
stand.
the next agenda item. Unless the trust members had any more questions about the inventory, what I'd like to do is open it up to representatives for the adult shared living of Harwich, because we now know that there are at least 6 parcels that could come under the jurisdiction of Affordable Housing Trust that could impact upon what you folks are looking for. So if you want to come forward, I apologize, dry cough, allergies, nothing behind that. If you could just identify yourselves for the record, and welcome.
Good afternoon, I'm Jonathan O'Callahan, 36 of Harwich. I'm the Director of Operations for Adult Shared Living. I take care of our physical assets. I also work at Cranberry Valley Golf Course, in charge of the golf cart barn, which will be ending soon due to seasonal work. Sitting next to me is the Secretary, Jan Cardillo. retired from mental health and substance abuse therapist, Massachusetts. Our mission is to create shared living environment between adults and special needs and single adults working in low-income workforce who can live independently and afford their own place. Currently, we're looking at 2 bedrooms for disabled, planned for me and Jeff, Jeff being our CEO, who's currently in the hospital due to illness, and 2 other people for low-income workforce. On September 30th, we voted to change the design of the house, originally as modified cape to unfinished second floor, to a more colonial-style house with 4 bedrooms, 2 floors already finished. The company that we're using is Camelot Homes of Tilton, New Hampshire, a new era-built home, which is 27 by 54. We'll be modifying the design for each bedroom to have its own bath and requires 4-foot extension. We're currently looking at, we need 10% down payment to start the process, about $25,000. Construction will take place at the New Era factory in Strattonville, Pennsylvania. Takes 6 months to build. During the time to have the excavation, preliminary jobs completed. Jeff will be the project manager. We'll need to acquire land interested in the Marceline property. We're here to consider us for donation or grants of land.
And we have given you a package that breaks down more of the expenses that's from the CPC application, and also a picture of the house and the blueprints. We think that it's kind of a novel approach of mixing adults who are disabled with people who are not disabled, able-bodied, but all of who experience low income, because Jeff and Jonathan are on disability or will soon be. And for myself, I have a grandson who is autistic, 23, developmentally disabled, lives in a group home, but it's 2 hours away. And what got me interested in this project, I was talking to Jonathan's mother, and I thought, well, I can't really volunteer to help out with my grandson. I wish I could because of the distance, but so I got involved here, and it was the first time I had ever gotten to know someone who was disabled. And I don't mean just saying, hi, how are you? I mean getting to know them as friends, and getting together and doing a project and having fun together, working at the Cranberry Fest and at the Harwich Stroll. And I think it's kind of an experiment having these 2 groups of people together, but I feel that where some have deficits, the others will kind of fill in. I'm hoping definitely for tolerance and hopefully understanding, and then followed by friendship. There would be a very strict application process because of these 2 people that would be the first people in there. And on the long-term basis, if this works, we would like to continue it with other homes and other donated land, because that would be, and we're not fussy. If you have 6 parcels of land and you want us in one of them, we will gladly take it. We are not proud. We're proud of our program, but we're not too proud to accept donations.
Thank you. First of all, thank you both for being here. Jonathan, I know you and I had talked several times remotely. I think this is our first chance to work together in person, so it's nice to see you. in person, because it means we're making progress and it can have meetings like this. Thank you both for coming, and I know Janet, you and I have talked a few times. So what we have in front of us from you folks then is, you have background material that supports your, you have a CPC application presently,
Yes.
and it looks like it's for $250,000 from the community housing bucket, for lack of a better word. Thank you. And so we will have a future agenda item if this trust is looking to endorse that and be a, not a sponsor, but I think it's referred to as a related group. Give me one second. Well, I can tell you that right now they're asking you to reach out to other boards, committees, and organizations that have jurisdictions. So certainly, if you're looking for land that may eventually come under this trust, you're in the right place.
Okay.
For the members, what I would ask is that we can discuss the inventory that we expect to have coming into the trust, and if there's any properties that we see there that may support a project of this nature or anything else. I should have noted early on, I keep referring to a certain project in town as the Pleasant Lake Avenue project, because I've heard from friends of the Marceline family that they would prefer that it not be referred to as the Marceline project. And so I'm trying to create a new thing, say Pleasant Lake Avenue. But the properties that we all know off of Pleasant Lake, where the town presently, through the trust, owns, I always get the number wrong, is it 6 parcels?
5 totaling 13.34.
Thank you. 5 parcels totaling the acreage over 13, and that we know from last week's town meeting that the town is going after an additional parcel, and then, should that be acquired, it will be conveyed directly to the Affordable Housing Trust. So we know we have acreage there, but we also know now that we have an inventory. If I exclude the Albro House, I think we're still talking in excess of 25 acres in total. Having said that, I know that the parcel at 0 Depot Road has restrictions on it, because that's the largest parcel, coming in at 17 and a third acre. And I'm not familiar with these properties, so I would refer to you folks if you think that any of these
We
other
did take a
parcels may be
look
available.
at Oak Street, and it was deemed it was only suitable for a single family.
For one unit.
For
yeah.
one unit. Okay. So that was,
And that's Oak Street, somewhat adjacent to the golf course.
yeah, it's right, yeah, it's right there.
Would,
It's on that side.
are you guys looking to be in a place that's with a sidewalk, or is that,
I think we would
is it?
probably need something to be wheelchair accessible at some point. We want to have that option.
I mean, one of the things that you should consider, that, because you're talking about the P Lake properties. I was corrected to call them Mount Pleasant Lake one time, and John reminded me Mount Pleasant happens to be in Cambridge, and I should
Oh,
forget
right.
that. It's P Lake.
There we go.
P Lake.
But that is not, depending, your time frame tells us you want to have it built within 6 months. That means you'd like to start to put it in the ground. That is probably pretty tight, number one. Number two, sidewalks might or might not be in some portion of the P Lake properties, but that has not been designed yet. Sidewalks add a significant cost, so we'll consider that. Having said that too, you're asking for $250,000 from the CPC, am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And that will provide 2 people, or
Four,
Four.
2 disabled and 2
No
workforce.
income.
yes.
Okay. On top of that, a parcel of land, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, a parcel of land is at least another $250,000, at least.
Now, is that what we would end up paying, or,
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that you're asking us for $250,000 in cash, which would come from our affordable housing bucket and a parcel of land that would come from our affordable housing inventory.
No, they have a, they
Have an
have a,
application
they have an
with CPC.
application before CPC for this
I know,
spring.
but that still comes out of what would be the housing bucket.
Will it? I don't know.
Uh,
Could.
Well,
I mean, it could.
It could,
Right. Looking at the CPC application, community housing says that it relates to acquisition, creation, preservation, and/or support of community housing. I'll leave it to the CPC, and not just the member present today, but certainly others there where the town has an application in, as we've done for several years, but that doesn't prevent any other entity,
Okay.
private or otherwise, from also seeking those funds.
I guess what I'm saying is that, in principle, I don't mind the $250,000 that you're asking for, but if it's coming out of an allocation that we need, I don't think I'd be too supportive, because that's $500,000 for 4 people, if I do my math right. So, well,
No,
we're gonna create 4 affordable housing units for
Right.
$500,000.
What?
my understanding,
No,
no,
it's shared housing. It's just one colonial house.
4 people.
Yeah, 4 people, 4 bedrooms, each with its own bath.
Yeah,
And then everything else is shared, the kitchen, the living room, and,
well, I know, but the cost to get it built and lived in is
is,
$500,000.
250,000, yeah.
Pardon me?
what, 250? and
250,000 completely finished and built.
it's a prefab house.
Prefab,
Prefab.
yeah.
I know,
They're looking for land.
that's with
and then they're looking
$250,000
for cash
at least.
to build the house.
Okay, I see what you're saying, that we have to count that, because we had put down 150,000 for land,
Mhm.
and, but we are hoping to get it donated. We are, I mean, it's hard with Jeff having had medical issues where he's not available. Everything came to a standstill, but we have other people who have expressed interest in donating maybe land, maybe excavation services, definitely like plumbing, things like that.
I understand that, yes.
So the land, well, we're hoping to get it at no cost.
I know.
But you're saying
I realize that.
it does cost.
It's land we either can't use or can't sell,
Yeah.
so it comes at a cost to us.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You see
Yeah,
what I
I
mean?
see, yes, it clicked.
So, and my question then, are we getting, and I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to degrade this, I mean, I have the same situation that you have, but $500,000 for 4 people is expensive.
Okay, I'm not sure where you're getting the 500,000 from.
Well,
Oh,
He-
okay, all right, I see.
He's talking the
I've imputed the
250,000.
value of the land, of
Okay.
a parcel of land at $250,000, which is probably on the low side.
Yeah,
And is your other money coming from fundraising? I know the 250 you want to secure with the CPC funds, but the other funds?
Yes,
if you
we-
take the land out, it's still $392,000.
yes,
Is that coming from fundraising?
it's gonna be fundraising, yeah,
Gotcha.
and grants.
Yeah.
But we're just building our board of directors right now.
Mhm.
So far between the Harwich stroll and going to other places, we've raised $2,000 so far.
Great.
Setting up a table during the Harwich stroll. We're looking to do the holiday stroll as well. We're looking for other ideas as to fundraising. There's not much in town right now between now and the holidays, but anybody has any interest in helping us with fundraising or knows of any situations where we can physically be there and set up a table, give information out, get donations in any way that we possibly can.
Okay, I understand. And the reason I ask is I have been involved personally in putting up houses like this, and it's not as smooth as you wish it to be. Let's put it that way.
Oh, the other clarification is, it takes 6 months, but we, just for the application, we put August to start, but that's not really definite. That was, just a guess.
Yeah, we'll go on probably a little later on in this meeting and talk about the timeline that we might be looking at, but a timeline of 6 to 12 months is probably within the timeline that we're looking at, so
Okay.
that fits. And I suspect that one of the things you might look at to make it easier for you and quicker is look at other parcels, because to be able to cut a parcel of land out in the middle before there's a road and before there's anything else is much more, some of these other parcels are effectively ready to go now,
Okay.
not later. And it's probably much more advantageous to you to plan for something that you know where it is, as
Okay.
opposed to a question mark in the middle of 500,000 square feet.
Right, and when you asked about sidewalks, I was just thinking of in front of the house, like you pull up, get out of your car, and it'd be nice to, but I'm thinking more of a driveway, which is something we would do. We don't need sidewalks.
So maybe the Oak Street, because we had determined that that would be too expensive for us to develop,
Correct.
correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
But it
Yeah,
would
for
fit one house.
Yeah, for example, for us to do the Oak Street, let's say you've got the numbers right here, it's $500,000 to build something there, we get 1 or 2 units out of it. The example I always bring up in Yarmouth on 28, the town gave about 2.1 million, which is roughly 30,000 per unit. They got 69 affordable units out
For
of that.
70
For
units.
30,000 per. So we only have so much land and so much money, so we want to get as much as we can out of it.
Okay,
But to me, I think Oak Street could be a really good fit.
okay,
So that's a,
Because
Yeah.
we're going to get more bang for our buck, and you are probably too, because,
yeah,
we're looking at getting as much value is affordable housing at the end of the road. How many units can we put up? We're gonna count the numbers,
okay.
and 4 isn't enormous.
yeah.
So if you can put it somewhere else
And that might be
And I
a good
suspect-
thing for fundraising too.
for fundraising too, because it's pretty difficult to go out and say, oh, it's somewhere out there.
Yeah, no,
But if you can go by and see the sign on the ground, that's something different.
okay.
Are those going
Yeah,
into the
one-
golf course, right?
It's all a matter of selling it, yep.
How big is the parcel at Oak Street?
How big is it?
It's a pretty good size.
It's big enough to build 4 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
believe so. I think it's 2 parcels, and it's over 2.5 acres, but you can only build on a certain part of it.
Okay,
So
One
that's
thing
why-
One thing that we're looking to do too, once the house is built and we're moved in, is build a vegetable garden and growing our own vegetables and selling them on the farm stand
That's great.
as part of our fundraising.
Excellent.
okay,
So
so,
you, I guess what I'm saying Ed, is we will, or you can look at the list and go out and drive by it. It's easier to drive by a road that's already there as
Yes.
opposed to one in your mind.
yes. Okay,
And I
Well,
think
with
it's
that
on the
said, for the-
website
Go ahead.
somewhere.
Yeah.
It's on our, because we reviewed it, it was pre-COVID, like, that winter.
And what I'm,
January maybe, 2020, something like that. So it would be recorded,
Yeah, and the golf course came and they supported as well.
yeah.
so, and I'm saying this from experience. I've built 3 or 4 of these, and what you think is gonna be a couple of months ends up being a couple of years.
oh, really?
And, one of them we had done was delivered 3 days before a hurricane in Boston.
Oh, no,
Gosh, did it
And you
survive?
can't, there's some things you can't control.
I know.
And building them now is very difficult. And I tell you, I'd make a suggestion that I would also look at a couple of house builders in Ontario. It's 30% cheaper,
Okay,
and they have the same building code that we have.
okay.
They build for a cold climate too.
But to Larry's point earlier, like even Oak Street, you know, there is a value on those properties, so we have to weigh those options.
Yep.
But if we can't do anything with one, you know, putting up one unit or have a developer that's gonna show any interest in doing that, that could be a perfect fit, even though we're giving up a value that we really might not be able to do anything
Right.
with. So just something to consider. Every piece is gonna be different.
I mean, because, you
But the
know,
Pleasant Lake property is, we could
it's-
divide it up and try to get the most we can out of that.
and also having said that, when you're looking at, at other parcels, we don't have any difficulty getting rid of parcels to Habitat for Humanity. None. They
Yeah.
take every one we give them, so
Yeah.
you are in fact in competition, don't be too picky.
Yeah, I'm not picky.
We're not picky at all.
No.
Whatever you're willing to give is what we'll take.
So, what I'm saying, and I'm being quite honest, we want to get as much value as we can for the limited resources that we have. And if we can help you do that to get to your goal and help us, it's far better off.
Okay. Would there be a problem putting a house next to the golf course?
Not least, don't mind getting golf balls in the backyard.
Yeah.
But no, it's not in a place where they hit golf
Yeah,
balls.
it's not.
Not NIMBYism?
No, they had actually come before the board.
believe
You'll
they
see
came,
that
yeah.
on the meeting. They had come before and they had supported it.
Okay. Oh,
It's-
great.
I think it's like if you,
It's on the uplands on the entranceway.
on the yeah, if you were to turn into the road into there, and it's off on the left or
So
the
what they would
right.
be looking for is nice landscaping, the arrival experience.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, we can revisit that. It was almost 2 years ago, that meeting, so we can
Yep.
revisit that.
Okay.
But I think it's worth coming again after we sort out some of the administrative stuff that Joe was speaking about earlier. And then maybe I could review that meeting as well and try to get some more feedback. I
But
think
you've,
that's-
you've got the list, and
Yeah,
we'll look at it, and if you want to talk to Brendan, or talk to me, or talk to Judith, that's easy, you can do that,
Okay.
not difficult. But we can probably help you out, because all you're looking for is a couple of thousand square feet, you don't care how big the rest of the parcel is.
Okay.
You want to get to it.
Okay.
There's
And
there's water on the street in Oak Street.
And I would recommend, it's probably unrealistic, but that you do talk to some small local builders,
Yep.
just to get.
'Cause you have to get
an estimate.
You have to get a contractor to screw the pieces together.
Okay.
They come on 3 different trucks or 4 different trucks. They don't, it's not like they come on the back of a pickup.
We got the estimate of 6 trucks coming from,
And then they have to, it's not an easy process, and they have to
Brattonville,
fit.
yeah.
Right, and then the plumbers and I would recommend you also, when you're talking to different vendors, if they are interested in donating, see if you can get a letter of support with an estimate of what, dollar-wise, they might wanna be interested in supporting to a project,
Okay.
Okay.
Because builders now are very difficult to get in touch with,
yeah.
as are engineers, surveyors, and everybody else.
We've been in touch with Rob Hour, and some other people are looking to donate, excavation, septic.
that's great.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Ask
and
them
other-
if they would put that in a letter.
Okay.
Can be
Yep.
non-binding in a letter, but that will also beef up your applications too.
Okay.
All right.
All right. This has been
And
very
it,
helpful.
you know, when you start getting support like that, it starts getting more.
Because it's not like you're, raising money for a team to go to New York to play a ball game. This is $500,000 they're trying to raise. You really have to work hard at it.
You know, we're all volunteer. And I just got on board this summer, and I was like, whoa.
And have you talked to the group, and I'm gonna blank on the name, that created the housing for autistic adults in Orleans?
Oh, I have their
Yeah, I would
address.
suggest you sit down and meet with them
Okay.
and ask for their help, suggestions, and creating this project in a bigger way.
Yeah, I know there's an autistic home in Dennis, too.
And
It's
it's
called
the same group.
Forward Project.
Forward,
Okay.
thank you. It's the same group.
Oh, it is? Okay.
And I have a good friend of mine actually was the project manager on that,
Okay.
so I can maybe put you guys in touch with them as well, so you can see what I think everyone was talking about all the bits and pieces and how long you can take. I believe that was a project for 8, I believe with a shared space, but anyways.
Yeah, I was hoping at the time my grandson could come down, but my son didn't want to move because his business takes him all over New Hampshire and Connecticut and Mass. So,
But you've got some homework now, so we'll look forward to seeing you again.
okay.
Absolutely.
And as you progress towards the community preservation process, when you reach out to Jan, let me know. I know the application asks for us to sign. You can tell the CPC that we're doing an ongoing review with you folks. We'll have you come back at a future meeting
Okay.
when you've done some of that follow-up. But I want to thank my colleagues because you folks have said you've learned a lot. I know I've learned a lot. And so we're hopeful that we can get something done for all parties.
Okay.
All right, but we
When
applaud you
is-
for where you are so far.
When is your next meeting?
So we have not contemplated that yet because I know we run up against the holiday schedule.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be sometime in November,
Okay.
but I suspect it will possibly be after the next CPC updates.
Okay.
I understand those are, I know I'm going November 2nd, and I believe the next one is November 16th, or maybe 18th, but, yeah.
Okay. All right. Lots of stuff to check on.
Give Jeff our best for swift recovery.
Yes, absolutely.
No, I-
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you,
And
nice
if you
to see
need,
you. and-
Too, thank you, Joe.
You
Thanks
can
for
get
coming.
Elaine, who you talk to get our emails if you need them.
Okay, I think we do. It's been very hard to get anything.
So now you know that Ellen is the one I should have directed you to, and she is the keeper of all that, so we can certainly help with that.
Okay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, nice to see you again.
Good luck.
So for the benefit of the trust, if we want to go back to item A, as I was saying earlier, and Brenda, there was a very brief update first, that with regard to the procurement of the items under 2, 3, and 4, under A, I have names, I have quotations ready to go. What I didn't have is an understanding of what resources are available. I'm becoming more proficient at our fund accounting software and now know that as of today, we have $416,797.99 in the fund balance related to the Harwich Housing Trust. What I don't know if there are any restrictions on that as to whether it needs to be directly for affordable housing purposes or for administrative.
Okay.
And so the other part of that, as you would imagine, is every one of those, surveyor, engineer, and appraiser are out there. It's just a question of getting them under contract and getting them in a timely manner. The Board of Selectmen approved the appointment of special legal counsel, so I'll be reaching out to Matt Lawler to extend that agreement. That should be pretty straightforward. Other than those items, to me, the biggest item for us is our item A1, and what do we want to do as far as community outreach for the general public? I can tell you that in anticipation of the staff and committee walkthrough that we had done a few weeks ago, there was ample interest from parties unrelated, parties for the general public, and so I told them that we would come back on the 25th and we would start talking about potential outreach. Now, knowing that we're gonna get into the bad weather season, we can contemplate an outreach that is in a meeting rather than at the location itself. But we have ready access to the property if you need me to do photos and videos and things of that nature. But what is the sense of the trust as to what we should do next on outreach for the general public for that project?
First and foremost, as I mentioned earlier to the chairman, I got an email this morning from the Cape Cod Men's Club looking for a presentation. That's about, depending on how many people go to the meetings, probably 50 to 75 elderly men that play golf. Having said that, they're curious about that. They asked about a presentation. So since I'm not going to be here on the 19th of November, perhaps either Brendan or Judith, I would suspect the two of you, it might work well. They'll give you lunch and you talk for a little while and answer questions. It's pretty easy. You probably shouldn't get too many difficult questions from them, but it'll be interesting, and I think it's a good way to break the ice, number one. So if you guys, I'm volunteering you right now if you'd like to go. It's a kind of a lunchtime thing, and
Yeah.
it'll be at some restaurant. I'll find that out and let you know, because they kind of move around. But I think, having said that, also, for other places like the Chamber of Commerce, Joe, and for other people that might be interested, we should probably get, we can, some of them we can do ourselves, and others, I don't know, how we should handle that. I mean, I don't mind doing some of it, but I'm not gonna be here for a couple of months.
Sure.
So we talked about in the past, like, doing a, public forum. We actually had it in this room one time.
Mm-hmm.
And not so much in this setting, but we'll have, some pictures on the big screen
Right.
here. And we're part of the group, listening in, not so much a formal setting. For us, abutters is always important to make sure they're here. Any interested parties you've had to date would be great, and post it. I think a public forum is a good way to go.
And I would think, also, Joe.
Before you do that, would the I always get it wrong, multi-purpose room at the community center work, where it's more of a rectangular room with a big screen?
Yes, I think we tried to do that one time, and there was a problem with the screen, I think, and that's why we had it here.
I
But we
got you.
had the
Yep.
right number of people, so it worked.
Yep,
If we're gonna have, it depends on how many people are gonna show up.
sure. And I'm just thinking, rather than have it presented as like a board meeting,
Yeah, not a
it's
board
meant to
meeting.
be a forum.
It's a
Yep.
forum, correct.
And I think that, that would be a good forum, Joe, because people that I've talked to, I know there seems to be some interest. And, I suppose it was the day before Christmas, we might not get anyone, but sometime in November or sometime in mid-December, I think that might work, because people seem to want to get some input into the end result.
Absolutely.
And I would suggest, and we talked about this before, not just a forum, but an actual charrette, where, like, we take that big room over at the community center, and maybe there's 80 people that show up, right? Or they pre-register, whatever, but everybody has sticky pads, and it's a way of envisioning what works, and it's usually like a 3-hour, the ones that I've been to are like 3 hours, and it's a process that you go through of trying to figure out,
You talk about alternatives,
yeah.
and somebody that knows what they're doing puts
Oh, yeah,
alternatives up on
no,
the
it's
board.
run by a professional group that
That was gonna be
does
my
this
question,
kind of
yep.
thing, absolutely.
Is that
It
the
would be
kind of
nice to
thing that,
reintroduce the properties. We do have slides already. We had one slideshow where we had all the properties
Yes,
that are listed on this sheet, and we can add Pleasant Lake on that as well.
sure,
And just to show how maybe we got the fun, just who we are, just a brief presentation, and then take questions.
And I think if we had the part-time housing specialist on board by then, they might be able, certainly it would be a good spot for them to get their feet wet, for that person.
and I guess we wouldn't even, and Larry, you probably know best, time-wise, we wouldn't even have a lot of the details of the land and what we could and could not do
Right.
space-wise until late spring, I'm guessing.
We probably, in the grander scheme of things, we're looking at, I would say, some kind of a subdivision where the roads are laid out. You can put parcels on them later.
But is that something that we need public input on, or is that like a standard thing?
Well, it's nice to have a charrette to do a subdivision, but the engineers and surveyors do it,
I mean, is
It
it more
is on
based
Friday
on
and
the way the land
Water goes
moves?
up and down with pressure, but everything else goes downhill.
Okay,
So, you've got to work on the land and how you divide the thing and how it's worked. And that virtually means that you have to have an engineer, a surveyor will draw it up, and an architect to some way, shape, and form, so that you'll get the best utilization out of what we have.
and is that something that the general public can have an input in, or is the general, should the general public Is that something that's more
Not on the engineering
technical?
side, I wouldn't think on the engineering side,
Okay.
because.
I'm
Like
asking.
I said, we're
I'm just
trying to get
adding.
as many parcels. I think it's more about letting everyone know what properties we have, you know, how we're going about the process. And we could talk about each one individually, you know, what's the
Yeah.
next step? At Pleasant Lake Ave, it's really, you know, we talked about, you know, getting the site plan together and, you know, we're not.
What
even-
might
the
go
next
where,
steps
for
would be-
example, if you've got higher uses, you might want to put them closer to the entrances.
Yep,
If you've got a big wide flat field and you want to put some,
So my question is that something that is a technical
yes,
decision, or is that some, like, technical, financial, or social, meaning the community?
you'd like to get.
Or is
the-
it a balance?
You'd like to get the technical working with the financial so that the engineering will, you're not gonna spend a fortune to, you know, make a flat field out of a hill,
Okay.
where you don't have to plan your sewers so that there's 9 lift stations there, so, yes.
And
you'd
I'm
like-
asking these for the general public when they watch
Yeah,
this.
you'd like to look at things like that, and then the uses that we put, you know, higher uses, closer to the entrances, so you keep the traffic down and where the traffic is going to be, so it'll have the least impact, and that is at some point in time, we certainly would like to talk to the neighbors there too, to get their input in the ultimate development of it, because it'll have an effect on them.
just awareness,
Yep.
that's all. Very similar to what we did.
And in all probability, we'll probably use some form of a 40B for it. It'll be a friendly 40B, there's no question the town owns it.
Can you just explain what, like, why, what,
The 40B is a method of development that is a general law in Massachusetts, and towns that do not have 10% affordable housing, correct me if I stumble along the way, towns that do not have 10% of their housing inventory considered affordable are required to fall under this. There's only, I believe, Boston, Springfield, Worcester, and Lawrence. I think they're the only towns. A few other towns might be coming close to it. To having that 10%, then 40B doesn't have an effect. There's no question that 40B has an effect in Harwich, because we do not have 10% of our population considered affordable by the SMSA for Barnstable County. Having said that, we'll probably use it because it gives us an advantage with zoning when we do that zoning, and we can use that zoning to the town's betterment.
so just because the property, any of these properties will come under the Affordable Housing Trust doesn't mean that we can build more densely, because we're correct? This is, again, just for public understanding.
For public understanding, it's certainly, I
We don't have a magic wand. We have to
We don't have a
follow
magic wand.
regulations.
We can put zoning in that is higher than the current zoning, which is, I think, 100,000 square feet. But that's zoning that's not going to be used. So we'll put some type of zoning in there that allows a higher density, probably some variation of single-family duplex, and maybe something a little higher than that, but I doubt if certainly not gonna put big apartment blocks up there. It's not what the town looks for and not what we anticipate. So having said that, we can use 40B to put affordable housing in, and yes, in some instances, we could sell some of the land to make
Cash
money to
buy.
plow back into affordable housing,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
The CPC money that we use is only for affordable housing, though. That's
Correct.
all. When we purchase land with CPC money, it is only for affordable housing, period. And somebody, when we do that, that's going to be, that's a very difficult and complex application, so that's why somebody should be looking at doing that. That is, if anybody looked through the application for Chloe's Path, that's not something you sit down and scratch out in 2 days. It's a very complex application. And it's got design and costs, and it's got a lot in it. The Commonwealth requires a lot, so that's what
You're
we're
the
looking
same.
in some way, shape, and form to do that. And Judith, I'm sure you'd love to jump in and write a 40B application.
No, this is for the general public, and also just from our walkthrough, just,
It is,
it's a lot of education.
it's a complex project.
It is, it's complex, it's exciting
Plus,
though.
our RFPs will be reflective when we have these meetings. That feedback we're gonna get from the community is gonna funnel solely into those applications and what we're looking for developers to partner with. So that's why the forums are important.
All right, so what I've heard is next steps on outreach. First, it's important to have the engineer, the surveyor. I also heard architect. Is that necessary to have on board for the outreach, or is that separate?
Not, if we had an architect involved, that would be fine, and with a little luck, we might find an architect as the housing assistant, housing specialist. If we found one of those, we'd be lucky.
Could we also get somebody to speak on financing?
Well, that was gonna be my next question.
Okay.
If I could, first on finances, meaning I've given that balance that we have, but I don't know if there are restrictions in that 416,000. So I need more information on the finances that we have, and I know you used a different word of financing, and so we would also need some professional services related to that. I think the first thing I have to find out is how much of this is earmarked for the construction of affordable housing versus these administrative costs. I'm aware that the town has cell phone revenue that could go from the Board of Selectmen to the Affordable Housing Trust, but that has not occurred, and it would require an action of the board first. I also don't know presently what revenue, what dollar amount is available for that kind of revenue. And then last but not least, we do know, I should say, that the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund was adopted at the special town meeting. That does not go into effect until July 1st of 2022, and we wouldn't expect any sizable money to be available until closer to
24.
2023 or 24. But it is another mechanism that the town can rely upon, and the town can rely upon to potentially support the trust.
Yes, so it would be, it's a good question, the financing of the process. We can certainly finance a fair bit of it as it stands now, and depending on how and when we develop it and what sequence, that also depends how we'll develop it. But if we're going to do it in a standard way, because it's probably rather difficult to find contractors that can put up a large amount of units in the course of a year. So we'd probably phase this into 3 or 4 years, I would suspect, if not longer.
I would think.
Yeah.
And
And by financing, I was also how it's going to, are we gonna work with developers? Are we gonna hire our own builders? Are we gonna take out bonds? That, there's all different ways to finance
There are.
something. And then they have different rules.
And I do believe, I know there is bonding through community preservation. I've recalled the chairman of that committee talking about a future discussion. Kathy, not to keep picking on you, but that discussion hasn't occurred yet, correct? We're,
In terms of bonding something for, whether it's for affordable housing or
Correct.
open space or anything like that, no, because we haven't gotten that far.
yep. So the chairman of CPC has talked about a conversation in the future about bonding generally. So we might be part of that discussion.
Yeah, and if we have a request that far exceeds what's in the pot, then of course we would discuss what other ways are there funded, which would include bonding.
Yep.
So generally, I mean, you've given us an entrance to the game and enabled us to purchase the property. Having said that, we'd like to parlay some of that into being able to help ourselves so that we can get the most value out of the money you've given us, and still do it on our own, shall I say. I know that there's a feeling from a number of people I've spoken to that we'd prefer not to take federal money. That puts us into a different ballgame.
And that
If
could
you
be
take,
pretty
if you take
short-sighted.
federal money, you've got to play by the federal rules.
Yeah, that's sort of the name of the game. I mean, if you talk to this housing.
Oh, no,
assistance-
that's just a
Housing
mortgage.
Assistance Corporation, et cetera.
When you get down to the mortgage, that's
Yeah.
not something we're worried about right now. I suspect that the local banks would be more than happy to look at financing that, but any federal money, overall, if you take federal money for infrastructure, then you play by the federal rules, and the same thing with state funds. If you take state money, then you've got to play by the state rules. So the more we can keep Harwich involved in this, the more control we have over it.
Can I ask a question? Can the trust even, like, where's our legal boundaries as far as what we can and cannot? I mean, so I'm thinking like the water department, water and wastewater department is a separate entity to a certain extent, but
Mhm.
a certain extent it's not. First thing that popped into my head was if we take ownership in quotes, of one of these properties, does this board need to be buying some kind of separate insurance? Do we need to have some kind of liability insurance? I know you're shaking your head, or is it still under the general umbrella of the town?
The town.
Yeah, it's still under the general umbrella of the town, even if you look at the enabling legislation
Okay,
for affordable housing trusts and municipalities. They emphasize that for purposes of state ethics, for purposes of procurement, open meeting law, all of that still applies. So we're still a subsidiary of the overall body politic known as the town. And so the members that serve on this trust serve the town, and the town's liability insurance by extension continues on in that way. So we have that already covered, but it does get to me to the bigger question of, as we go into these projects, I think it's gonna benefit us to have a future meeting, and I'm looking in the direction of certain board members, whereby the Board of Selectmen may wanna convene a meeting of all related parties to say, okay, how are we gonna approach these projects that we have? I understand the trust role very significantly to be the keeper of lands to be used for affordable housing purposes. That is, whether we use the land and develop the land for affordable housing, or in some cases, dispose of the land and
For
use the
affordable housing.
proceed for affordable housing purposes.
Correct.
So that's the primary goal of this group. And then there'd be many others that deal with projects that come out of that. So we'd have to have a broader, a bigger tent meeting of all the groups and say, who has what role as we proceed down this path.
And when you stepped right into the next topic I'd like to bring up that is kind of in the same way there. It's somewhat the same as the folks that spoke to us earlier, but we had a discussion, had first a couple of telephone calls from the Veterans Administration and a discussion with the Veterans Administration. They've looked at the property out there. Brendan and I met with them. They'd be more than interested in a small piece of land out there to put up some veterans housing. Probably not to exceed, I would say, anywhere from 8 to 12 units or a couple of quadruplexes, that type of thing. And they could be relatively quick. We don't have to worry, I say we don't have to worry too much when it's the federal government. Nothing is easy with the federal government, but nevertheless, they're the type of people that have a parcel of land and go ahead and develop it on their own. Having said that, we wouldn't have to do very much of anything else, so it's worthwhile thinking about that. And they're not looking for much more than probably an acre, if they had an acre of land, which is one of my thoughts there when we talked to the other folks, that an acre of land there could produce 10 units of housing.
wow.
And so that,
And
and
what
the
do you
10
mean by
units of
10
housing would be,
units? Like a
it's nice to say it
two-bedroom?
would be all for veterans of Harwich, but that's, again, federal money, and you become veterans from around. And it would be,
Yeah,
they spoke, Brendan, about both disabled veterans and family veterans, the younger veterans that are now veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah,
That
they're more interested in the family.
Yeah, they're more interested in family-type housing.
That's
And
what they're focused on, for this next year.
So that's their shot there, and They're quite willing to go. They're looking forward to moving as quickly as they can, and we'll put them up at the top of the list because they're easy to deal with, believe it or not, and it doesn't cost anything.
And they probably have their projects, I mean, they probably have standard plans and, yeah.
And this is veterans housing generally, not necessarily just related to Pleasant Lake Ave or any other property. It could be there, it could be other properties.
It doesn't make, they'd be delighted anywhere, and
So we can have that.
they do more than one.
Sure, we can have that come back on for a broader topic. I would imagine you would have contact names?
We do, yes.
Perfect.
Would it be nice to get them to present, you know.
Sure,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. Is there anything else under item A before we get to item C?
No?
Yep.
But one thing.
Well, I'm looking to the audience because I figured there was a reason you'd be here, and please feel free to come to the table, identify yourself for the record. And not to sound like a video geek, I think that this table's better.
Oh, okay.
Caleb, do you have a preference on microphone? Whichever. All right, then Kathy, whichever you like.
Okay, no, I just have a quick question. Kathy Green, here as a representative of Real Estate and Open Space and CPC.
Sit down.
Just a quick question of why you need to procure an appraiser for the Pleasant Lake Ave project.
That might have been a typo by me, and that should have been perhaps architect.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Thank you for pointing that out, Kathy, I appreciate that.
Did it have something to do with the corner property? You were
Yes.
thinking it's.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
sorry, thank
There's-
you, yep.
So the corner property right on Pleasant Lake Ave
Yeah.
in Orleans, that property, the owner would like to work with us to square off their property. There's about 10 feet, they have a weird,
There's 10 feet there, that's kind of a little jog in the land.
correct.
It-
They're hoping to do that, so.
And
we're
there's a
looking
wood
to-
pile there, and someplace under the wood pile is the monument, or it might not be, as the case may be. Nobody's moved the wood pile yet.
That would be the surveyor, though.
Yeah.
That wouldn't
Oh,
necessarily.
but you have to appraise it,
You have to
to-
appraise it.
Right, the
you have to
town would
appraise
want-
it to sell it.
Right, the town would want its own appraisal rather than just relying upon theirs as to what we think the value is of that exchange.
Mhm.
That should be minimal expense, correct?
Correct.
One would hope,
And
yep.
we're hoping
The bigger
the
issue is
owner
getting
will
an appraiser.
participate in some of that funding as well.
Did that help?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item C, and there, really, the next two items were just me going through past notes, making sure I didn't miss an opportunity for discussion by the trust. In fact, item C was placed on here before I found that vexing issue with map 40 parcel Z5. But I know that the trust had been working with Laura Schufeld, Mass Housing Partnership. Do we want to continue that conversation? Do we want to ramp it up? Do we want to have something come back in November? And does anybody want to clue me in? You can say that
I
last one
would
first.
say
Continue with
if you
that.
can, yeah, if the, during the interim period, if the question about if the parcel at 265 Sisson Road is still available for us to use, then definitely we should ask Laura Schufeld to come in and we get that, or to call in
They
and
already
we.
started an RFP, there was some work already been done on that, and there's an old site plan that was
Yeah.
showing a shared septic system, so there's been some legwork done that be worth continuing that. At least get her in here one more time, and,
So I can have that earmarked for our next meeting in November, which we'll
yeah.
book at the end of this.
And I think when, one of the thoughts was also, as far as pricing of the building out there, was that if that could be somehow in tandem presented with the Pleasant Lake to potential builders, that it would bring the cost, there was because
Because it's such a unique property, and
And
to get a developer to do a smaller project, we're
Right.
thinking if we did, it's just a thought, if someone were to come in and do a really great project up at Pleasant Lake Ave, maybe they would be interested in doing another project, so it was just
Sure.
it was just a conversation.
yeah.
Just another idea of how do we get these small properties that can only fit 1 or 2 units And it may not, it's gonna be tough for us to find one developer, but if we were, maybe we can negotiate when we have a bigger, 13-acre property, we can
Right.
negotiate that. And that could be in the RFP as well, depending on how we size up each
Sure.
one.
So developer slash builder, depending on financing, right? Or, because I don't know, when I think developer, I think somebody that's actually gonna own or take a long-term lease. Or is that-
Correct.
That is correct, okay.
And in line with that, item D was next steps, if any. I know that we had, I know that the prior administrator had executed a contract with J.M. Goldson. I know that we lost the contract for a period of time. Don was able to remind us. And then pandemic ensued. So I know we've had J.M. Goldson do some work for the trust. I'm not fully aware of what they did, and do we need to continue on? We have a contract that has lapsed, but we still have the ability to execute another agreement if there's value.
I think they did a pretty good, she did a
Yeah.
pretty good job when she was here, yeah.
They were building out a strategic plan, correct?
Well, they
Yes.
were looking at developing the public outreach, the forums, everything
Yeah.
else that we should be doing.
Yeah, because then if we did hire somebody coming in, they could just execute quickly because,
Excellent, all right.
yeah, they
If,
did a really
For example,
nice
they did a
job.
charrette, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So that's really where Goldson can come into play, correct?
I think so.
Yep.
We need some help with that.
Community outreach and public fora and charrettes, okay.
And it also might be worthwhile to reach out to Cindy Williams at the Chamber of Commerce. Next time they have a chamber meeting, give a 10-minute presentation.
I'm gonna nominate you, Larry, for that.
We will book it
Before
before
you
Florida.
head south.
The plans go both ways.
And Joe, question for
Sure.
you, for the chair. When people do reach out to us, how do you want us to handle that?
Yeah.
So we're gonna, as we start getting calls or meeting people, we can present as we meet them here, but what's the best way? Should you be the lead, or how would you?
No, I don't have to be. The good news is, if people are reaching out to you folks, it's because of the reason why you're probably brought onto the trust in the first place, meaning you have an occasion to have these conversations. But to take it to the next step, what you could do is just let me or Ellen know that you want to have an agenda item that you can follow up with.
Okay.
So
Exactly.
certainly have the conversations and then say, and this is what I think we should put on the agenda for an update.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah, I think that works out
Excellent.
well.
all right, perfect.
Yep, and thank you for the question, though, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and likely the same with Dawn, too. I mean, I'm sure people,
No doubt, yep.
he's probably more upfront than we are because he's a selectman.
Exactly, yep. So the only other item I had to come before us is when are we meeting again in November?
And we all go to our phones. Used to be a calendar, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty easy, because it's gonna be Zooming.
Yeah.
When do you head to the warmer regions?
I'm not sure, but probably sometime around Veterans Day. I don't wanna run into any snowstorms.
Do we want to book a meeting just to make sure Larry has to come back in one more time? or do-
The day before he leaves.
Yeah.
I mean, Thanksgiving is on the 25th.
Yep.
So the week before would be the week of the 15th through the 19th.
So do Monday afternoons work? Because they do work well for me.
Monday afternoons work fine for
I'll
me.
remember this time, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, no, that wasn't the
I
reference,
was
but yes,
totally
Monday
thrown off.
afternoon.
I mean, like, it was in my calendar, but I usually get the reminder, and it just didn't happen.
I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
Do we want to shoot for November 15th at 1 PM? Does that work?
Sure.
Stay away
Be
from the
good.
holiday week?
Sounds
Yep,
good.
that'd be fine. That gives me a firm date, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're leaving on Tuesday.
Yeah, so then you can head out on November 16th.
Yep,
Did that work?
probably.
Excellent, even better, all right. All right, then having said that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
Thank you, moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
2:46, thanks, everybody.